Welcome back to my dad's podcast, Season 2, My Black is Transnational. Follow him on Twitter or Instagram. Hope you enjoy the show. Bye!
Hello, everyone. You are listening to My Black is Transnational. My name is Dr. Kalechi Bay Lamberts, and coming up on this episode, we'll be talking about Black culture, especially this new renaissance in African cultural exploration, and what it means for potentially Pan-African and transnational people. And I have this conversation with our guest for today, Mr. Mike Abrantie. But before we get into that, let's go through our usual formalities. If this is your first time listening to My Black is Transnational, you can find this podcast on your favorite podcast listening apps, your favorite platforms such as Spotify, Google, Anchor, or Stitcher. Please make sure to subscribe if you like what you hear. This is episode 8 of season 2, so there are tons of episodes in which you can listen to and go back, and I hope that you enjoy any or all of them. And you can always reach us if you have any feedback, rating, subscribing, and reviewing on these platforms. But if you want to reach us personally, you can email us at blacktransnational17@gmail.com. You can also get in touch with us or follow us on Instagram at Black Transnational Podcast. You can follow me personally on Instagram at blacktransnational_. Okay. And then if you just want to know all about the show, all that there is to know about My Black is Transnational, you can check out our website at blacktransnational.wixsite.com/podcast. And on this website is where you know about current episodes. You can also subscribe to the podcast from there. You can find out more about our guests and former guests from past seasons. You can find out more about the origin of the show. And if you ever want to be on the show, you want to be a guest on the show, you have a story to tell, you have you want to gist with me, because we do have our Let's Gist segment, you can always contact us through there as well. It's all available on the website. I'll repeat, blacktransnational.wixsite.com/podcast. Check out the website if you want to get in touch with us or just know more about the show. Okay, so our guest today, as I mentioned, is Mr. Mike Abrantie, also known as Mike B, for those who are near and dear to him. He is, for all intents and purposes, just an amazing, and I'll use the word just creative, because he is involved in music, he's involved in movies, cinema, he's involved in dance, he's a DJ. I mean, he's an engineer, like an industrial engineer, if I believe I'm correct. So he is a multi-talented, multifaceted individual that I've known for a while now. And we get into a really, really deep, insightful conversation that you'll hear that talks about his experience going from engineering into the entertainment industry, how he is passionate and very connected to Africa and what it means for him as far as what he does as an entertainer. And he also talks about what this new emerging African expression that we start to see now in all aspects of the arts, whether it's movies, whether it's cinema, whether it's, movies and cinema are the same, I'm sorry, whether it's music and cinema, and what these new emerging artists that are second generation African immigrants who, when I say that, I mean their parents were first generation immigrants, and what this emergence of transnational artists are doing, what they're doing in the industry that might help solidify or create unity between Native African Americans and African immigrants, and how it's bridging the gap and we're becoming more unified because of just where the future is headed and how we're being perceived all across the world, and how they are putting blackness and its versatility out there where people can see all aspects of being black. And this is being led by artists and musicians and actors and dancers and directors and producers. And what this can do, what this new age of exploration in African culture might possibly do, is tremendous. And the potential of it has no bounds. So Mike and I get into a really, really interesting discussion just about all that there is to know regarding the entertainment industry. And we could have gone even more deeper, but we had to be conscious of time. But I do hope that you all enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, because it was a really, really good time, a really good conversation. You can tell it was very natural, and I think we were really both engaged in the conversation. I think you can feel that as you listen. So, without any further ado, I'll stop talking here, and now I'll let you all listen to my conversation with Mr. Mike Abrantie. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to My Black is Transnational. And on this episode, we have a special guest. I mean, when I tell you that I thought like I'd have to go and find and pay somebody to be able to have this guy's time. I mean, or more like, we thank God for life, man. But this guy is, man, I've known him since he was a freshman at the University of Illinois, who has blossomed into something beyond the words that I don't even have right now. But I mean, when you talk about transnationalism, this guy embodies it, because he is a Chicago native that lives in LA, that's from Ghana, that travels all across the world to do different things related to music, filmmaking, entrepreneuring. I mean, this and it also has a non-for-profit organization that focuses on issues related to improving the conditions in Africa. I mean, and he works with another famous artist, Rotimi. He's a DJ. I mean, when you talk about 24 hours in a day, my brother knows how to conquer this thing, man. It's heavy, bruh. I can't even speak enough. I'll just let you say your own thing, man. Welcome to the show. I really appreciate you.
Man, I'm happy that you reached out. I'm happy to be on the show, man. And I love conversations that are pushing the culture forward. So happy to be here.
Yeah, man, thank you. And I'm glad you're here, because I think we have a lot of good things to talk about. One, I will just say, if you can take a couple minutes, I know I've hyped you up, and rightfully so, but I want you to take a minute for the audience to just hear you introduce yourself. So let them know who you are.
Man, well, you did a great job. First, I should say, definitely a better job than I probably would have done for myself. But my name is Mike Abrantie. That's what I'm affectionately known as. As he said, from the south side of Chicago by way of Ghana. I'm an Accra boy, in and out.
Yes, sir.
Did attend the University of Illinois, studied industrial design with a focus on technology. Let the creative wings spread from there. And long story short, I'm now a filmmaker. So I do everything from writing to producing. And these days, the people around me are pushing my hand into directing more and more. So that's where we are with it now. As you said, I am involved as a co-founder of Global United Diaspora. We're a not-for-profit that tackles the issue of enhancing life for people in the diaspora. So everywhere from Africa to Jamaica, Haiti, St. Dominica, St. Martin, St. Lucia, and the rest. So in a nutshell, that's kind of like a good well-rounded, outside of being a musical kind of connoisseur. Those are the things that occupy the majority of my time.
I appreciate that. Now we're going to cover all those things in order, and then we'll probably touch on the non-for-profit organization last, because I want to close strong. And but first, coming from U of I, and you mentioned you're an industrial engineer. Oh, that's what you went to Illinois for, and all of a sudden you find yourself in LA, working in the entertainment industry, with the arts and the artists. How did you find yourself in that area? Like, how did the wind take you to that area? Like, please explain.
So funny enough, I started computer engineering at U of I. That was my course, but it just didn't capture me enough. And I guess for me, what I really wanted to do was not that. I just thought it was. So I switched majors halfway through to industrial design. So I actually have a BFA, a Bachelor of Fine Arts in industrial design, which is, a lot of people don't know, it's literally the design of all things. So for my focus was technology. So we were doing a lot of technological kind of next level things when it comes to like doing phone design, speaker design, gadgets, external hard drives, computers, you name it. Working with projects like Dyson, who do the German engineering behind the vacuum, and Audi. I don't think there's any product line that we didn't touch. Everything down to Febreze. If it could be designed and created to be manufactured, we had to figure out what goes into the process from early design and iteration to mock-ups and prototyping. So that kind of was how I ended my college career. And then at the same time, in the college, me and a partner of mine, Doimo, we said we're going to go into screenwriting. We had too many stories that we would just nonstop talk about over and over again. We just couldn't stop talking about the stories. So we decided, all right, let's write the one that we've been most talking about. So at the end of my senior year, because I stayed in school a bit longer after switching majors, but at the end of my senior year, which is like my super senior year, we wrote the first project, and we haven't put that one out yet because we feel like that's our gold ticket, if you will. Right. We wrote that, and I think that really started the trajectory for me of taking it very serious and going at it full throttle. So that's kind of how I found my way. I mean, I was brought to LA to work for Eaton Aerospace as a strategic marketing kind of focused person. So it was kind of a technical sales / strategic marketing, how to improve some of their marketing strategies. And I initially thought I was going there to do design stuff, to design aerospace parts and things like that. So obviously it wasn't fulfilling. And so the world and the universe and just the laws of kineticism just brought me back to writing and creating. And so I left that company after 2 years, started a production company, really a creative group. We just function as a production company because we do in-house content. And then made my first short film, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and in history it was, man. And I think you all are continuing to do more and more things. So, I know when you were in Chicago, when you were in Illinois, I know you had a lot of experience being an Accra boy and bringing that Accra boy vibes into, what you did as far as just, on the side when you were part of, the creative groups doing things in the Afrobeat scene and then also bridging that gap with the Black American community. What's the vibe like over in the West Coast? Because it's something that I think for those who aren't in the West Coast, we don't really know. We always think about places like Houston and New York City and Chicago and even DC, where there's a huge population of diverse Black cultures. But what's it like in LA?
LA is a bit different. I would say there's not as many. There's not a dense concentration of Africans in any particular place outside of mid-city LA, which has a pretty large Ethiopian population. But outside of that, it's very dispersed. It's very spread out. But we're here. We do a few different types of events to kind of, census, if you will, what kind of crowd and audience we have. And so there's a lot of Nigerians here. There's a handful of Ghanaians, I would say, in the maybe thousands. But the majority, I think, from the diaspora is going to be Nigerians and Jamaicans. There's a bunch of Jamaicans in LA. And in the East Africans, of course, the Habesha community is large. So neck and neck, Habesha community and Nigerian community are going to be the biggest minority group here. And then you have the smaller groups, the Jamaicans, some Ghanaians sprinkled in here and there. But it's a wide net community. It's not as close knit as Chicago or New York might feel. But people come out. People still socialize when the opportunity presents itself. And then even on the art side, on the artist side, there is a web of a community, if you will, for the African artists here. So there's also an association called African Artists Association, ran by Francis Onolem and another gentleman. But they bring together the actors and the producers and the people in the creative space who are of African descent on a monthly basis with industry kind of connections and insights and guest speakers and panelists. And a lot of people don't know about it. So shouts to 3A's. It's a pretty dope organization here.
Oh, that's good. And shout out to them. And I think you bring up something interesting that I want to kind of touch on a little bit before we continue to build on this conversation. I want to take it back a little bit because as far as taking a sense of knowing which population is what, like when you were coming up in Chicago, growing up, like how were you able to, how did you identify yourself? Like you said, you're an Accra boy, but growing up in Chicago, it's tons of people from just the Black community. How did you construct your identity as to how you can, be able to move and work with the Africans, but also with the African Americans? Like, what was that like for you?
I think I was in a special position. Majority of the Africans in Chicago, at least the West Africans, live on the North Side. Mm-hmm. And so I did not live on the North Side. I was one of the few South Side Ghanaians. Yeah, and when I say few, I mean few. I mean, it may be just a few hundred of us, if that. And so I didn't have that community camaraderie for the African community as strong out where I lived. So for me, it was a trek into the North Side every weekend type of thing when I felt like it. Mm-hmm. I really wanted to be immersed. So I guess to kind of steer with the question is that I was really, really, really heavily immersed in the South Side Chicago Black culture. So it was a kind of I was living in two worlds, at home and when I would travel to either the suburbs or the North Side, it was nothing but Africans. Then back at the crib, it was nothing but Black people. So I kind of got an interesting juxtaposition of culture. What I identified with, however, because I always saw myself as an outsider in my community, was I just identified as straight Ghanaian. I didn't identify with American. I didn't identify with Black American. I identified with African. Mm-hmm. Half of that was because I didn't have a choice. It was essentially branded upon me by my peers. You know what I mean? The kid with the different name, with the slight accent, which I tried hard to get rid of. Mm-hmm. And so there was this ostracizing kind of relationship that was like, you're different, So it's either you accept that or you combat it and try to conform. For me, I chose to accept it and kind of use that as a champion and factor of people getting to know me or being introduced to me or being around me. It's just like, all right, well, I'm different. I'm Ghanaian. This is my culture. These are some of the things that make us different from each other. These are the things that make us alike. And so I think if you talk to people that I grew up with, they'll all tell you I did my best to impart with them a piece of my culture. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And for me, that was it was a motivational factor to be proud of where I came from. At first, you're going to get, you're always received with not the warmest embrace because you're different. But I think after explaining and getting people to understand where you come from, it becomes more of a warm thing where they feel like you've educated them on something that they're not exposed to. So I guess long story short, I identified as Ghanaian, always growing up. It wasn't until I think recently that I would even consider myself Ghanaian American. But I think the American portion of it is very important because there is a history, a very strong history of perseverance that Black America has that I think gets overlooked a lot because it's overshadowed by the pain that Black American community has experienced. Mm-hmm. But, if we look deeper, there's a history of triumphant kind of no taking no for an answer mentality that has been kind of the blueprint of Black American culture. And I think naturally I was able to get some of that in my upbringing.
I think you speak to something that I can definitely relate to very well as far as one, this whole idea of living in two worlds, and that's essentially why, I started this whole podcast is to kind of enlighten and just bring to the forefront this idea that a lot of us in the Black community, which tends to be overlooked, except for those who are in it, we tend to not know about those who are living in these two worlds. One world is what our, based on the expectations that our parents and family members from this, very, African side of our lives have. And then the
other expectations from the community that we're creating with our friends and families within our environment who may be from that strong Black, African American culture, and we are able to acculturate to both. We are able to speak intelligently both ways, but what it does to us at a young age is it puts us in a position where we're trying to figure out who we are, and we're being, labels are put on us, and we don't know whether to accept it or reject it. And then at some point, most of the time is when we get to college, but we then tend to see the benefits and we tend to apply it, hopefully for the betterment of educating others about the pluses of being able to embrace, both worlds, and hopefully even including those who aren't part of it to learn more and try to be part of that world, and understand that there's fruits to it. So, I mean, I think that's very powerful, man. So what are your thoughts as far as what the African American and the Black immigrant community, what do you think the relationship is between those two, in your opinion?
Well, I think of the last 5 or 6 years, relations have improved probably by 50%.
I agree. I agree 100%. Like, I was going to bring that up.
The interesting thing that has happened has been a shift. There's been more of a Pan-African kind of a quest for Pan-Africanism that hasn't been this strong since probably the late 80s, early 90s. And I think it's come of knowledge has been maybe the most powerful driving factor there. People are becoming more aware of their history. They're becoming more knowledgeable about some of the leaders that come out of Africa, some of the movements that have come out of Africa. And then I think there's a patriotism that is missing for Black Americans in America, because America has always shunned Black America. Has always treated Black America like the stepchild. Mm-hmm. And so as Africa reaches out, it extends its arms to say, hey, we still love you. We still want you to come back home. There's a bit of love that the Black American community is going to feel. And we've had our differences, I would say, as far as stereotypical kind of misunderstandings between Black America and diaspora community. But I believe now, after years of conversations, those stigmas are beginning to break down. It also helps that the music Afrobeats is also breaking into the Black community very, very powerfully. Yeah. And it's creating a sense of belonging for a lot of people who felt that they didn't have a connect or a direct connection or a tie to Africa. Yeah. So, I would say the relationship there is mending slowly but surely. And I mean, I've never seen it this strong, to be honest. We hear less chat about our differences and more chat about what makes us similar.
That's real. And, it's funny you bring up the same thing, because I had a conversation with TT Low-Key when she was on an episode in the first season of this podcast. And it was something similar. We were talking about Afrobeats make the world go round. And one of the things that we talked about was, I think this probably was around like your sophomore, junior year. But when the Azonto movement came in, the Azonto movement was heavy. I don't think people give that movement enough credit. That movement brought a lot, not just, Black people, but a lot of people across the world to really put the spotlight on Africa, West Africa. And then just the music and the dance and everything, with social media coming up and everything, Instagram and Twitter, like that whole thing blew up. And
it was crazy.
I mean,
look at what was going on in Europe, Amsterdam, China. People were going around the world, and we had social media to kind of serve as an evidence or an archive of such, where you really could see the global impact that was happening. I think you make a great point. That movement doesn't get enough credit for being, I guess, the spark for African dance. And
people came out the woodworks. Mm-hmm. Like, you had people in there you didn't even know were African, who were just coming out with, with pride all out of the woodworks, who started to really claim their identity and really want to get into it and really, showcase who they are and where they're from. I mean, and even in your situation, being in LA and you being part of, the AAA or 3As, as you said, I'm sorry, and just thinking about, now when I talk with my wife or, we're out, the arts, like the cinema and the music, the fine arts, has really done a fantastic job of bringing to light a lot of our dual citizens, a lot of those first generation Africans, but second generation immigrants. And you start to see that generational gap. Like our parents were the ones who really had that separatist attitude towards, the Black culture because of the will to want to thrive upon, coming to America and wanting to achieve and not, wanting to get into any mix up with anyone. But now you see their kids, which is, us, the offsprings, we're blended into this culture and we're making something out of it. That patriotism, that perseverance, we tend to, relate to that. So I'm starting to see more people who are Nigerian American or Ghanaian American or Jamaican American who are coming out and doing lots of amazing things in music, in movies, in dance. Like it's just exploding, bro.
It is. It's a new age renaissance of cultural exploration, and I love it. I can't get enough of it. I mean, personally, I've been pushing this agenda since I can remember. I mean, I started DJing when I was 14. Like, I had my first big gig when I was 15 in a club that was 21 and up. And it was non-stop, nothing but African music. Didn't play hip-hop music until later. But this was before the whole wave. This was before, at this point, we hadn't categorized things as Afro beats. It was other subgenres of music that had the labels. I mean, coming out of Ghana, we had high life and hip life music. At that point, hip life music was huge, which to me is the mother of Afro beats. Just looking at kind of the way that the beats are synchronized and the way that there's influence coming from like hip hop, there's influence coming from R&B, soul, and then you also have the traditional African elements of percussion. And that's a whole other conversation because, again, unfortunately, Ghanaians are very humble. So you don't hear a lot of braggadocious kind of boasting. But it's, to me, the direct kind of mother of Afrobeats is hip life music, which was the newest kind of like fusion of sound that was coming out of Ghana at the time with artists like Sako there blowing up. That was where the Azonto era started booming. All these things were like the precedent of what we now see as Afrobeats and even the dance. It just all evolved out of that kind of like booming surge of just cultural kind of evolution. Yeah, man. But I think what I was getting at is that this is a time, a very interesting time. The next chapter for this time is what we're doing in African cinema, which is more so what I'm very, very much so concerned and thinking about and actively working on different projects that can now put spotlight on African culture in a different way. Outside of the Nollywood, outside of some of the other niche things that we do on the entertainment side.
I mean, I think I was gonna ask you about that because what is that gonna look like? Because I think when we think about African cinema, we think about Nollywood, Gollywood, and all these other niche types of products that are out there, but what type of stories do you think we're in position as young Africans in America? What stories can we tell to be able to continue to strengthen? I mean, we've seen Black Panther, and that's more from a fantasy superhero type of perspective, but can we start telling real stories about real experiences, for people who live in multiple worlds or for people who are trying to get connected to work? Like, what type of stories do you think we can tell now, bro?
I mean, the sky is the limit at this point. The interest in Africa, in the culture, and in the history is now beginning to surge. And with that comes the opportunity to tell real historical accounts. For me, I'm a history buff. So that's where I start. That's kind of like where I begin. If I'm forming something out of clay, what is the historical relevance that is the basis for the story? And how is this story transformed and go to the place that it goes based on where it comes from? So the whole notion of Sankofa and going back and returning is kind of how I think when we talk about creating and inception. But now we have the opportunity to tell some of the stories about the Malian Empire, some of the stories about the old Igbo Empire, some of the stories about these historical giants when it comes to military force, when it comes to technological advancements, when it comes to agricultural resources, and the empires that were coming out of 14th, 15th century Africa before some of the greatest conquistadors were even mentioned in history books, like the Mansa Musas, who were developing extremely advanced piping systems, and the Ashanti kingdom, where they really understood kingdomness and chieftaincy and war and military strategy, and how to build communities and sub-cities and mega cities and things like that. These are things that historically are pretty much unmentioned, especially in the realm of entertainment, where most information is easily put out, if you will. Yeah. I mean, people learn things from watching TV and from watching nowadays streaming sites and things. And so now we have the opportunity to start to tell some of our historical grandeur from a perspective that is of a highly cinematic and well done approach. On the flip side, we also have the opportunity to start telling our modern day stories, things that we interact with as Africans every day, even from a duality or of a Nigerian American, Ghanaian American, insert that thing American perspective, where we have an understanding of two worlds. And so there's opportunity there to also start to tell the story from our point of view of how we grew up, how we felt being ostracized, how we may have sometimes wanted to denounce where we come from or not feel as prideful from where we come from, and how that evolved into eventually finding back the courage to say, nah, this is where I'm from and this is who I am. So I'm personally very excited to move into this new era of content and of cinema and film, where we're finally being able to project a voice that has been silenced for hundreds of years, and in entertainment for decades and decades and decades.
Man, I think you're speaking to my heart, bro, because as you said, me being a history fanatic, all those things mean a lot to me, being able to put that out there in a way that's taken seriously. In the past, those types of things have not been taken seriously. It's just been kind of, costumized, and it's just, people wearing, these clothes, and it's more so looking at those aesthetics and not really listening or comprehending the stories beneath it, understanding, the Aboriginal people and what has been done as far as community organizing, establishing economy and agriculture and, irrigation systems and all those things before these advanced technologies have even come to play. But being able to tell that story in a way where people can actually consume it and appreciate it is something that I'm excited for as well. But without getting too redundant, I want us to shift and talk a little bit about how you go ahead and continue to preserve your connection with Ghana, right? You said, most of your ties are still with Ghana. How often do you, go to Ghana? What do you like? Why are you still so connected to Ghana still?
Man, it's, I think, a complex yet simple answer there. Yeah. It's that I think, Ghana has always been for me the source of my creative energy. And I think, culturally, I would be lost if I didn't do everything in my power to stay connected to the source of this energy. So I'm in Ghana at least once a year. Usually around the same time, the holiday season. Mm-hmm. These days I used to start off going for a week or two. These days I'm there for at least 50 days. And it's important for me because I have a thing where the culture movers, the movers and shakers who are actively affecting change and who are the ones who are making things, if it's going to be left this year, they're the people turning the car left. I have to be in touch with them. I have to have my feet on the ground or my ears to the streets. And if it's the south side of Chicago or if it's the west side of Accra, I have to have an ear to the streets. I have to have my finger on the pulse of what's going on. I don't know why, but this is kind of how I get my re-energize. This is how I re-energize. It's how I recharge. And so I don't know. I've always made it a point to be connected, and I think it's important to be connected because whatever I'm doing here and abroad, if it is something I can do to help push a mission and or an agenda forward, I need to know what that agenda is. One, so I can know how I can be of assistance. Because at the end of the day, I'm what you call a super Pan-Africanist. I understand the power and what will happen if Black Americans move back to Ghana or to Nigeria or to Africa in general, Libya, wherever. If Black Americans move back home, I understand the trajectory of progress that will immediately occur. And so I want to position myself to be able to be a soldier in that initiative and be able to play my card when the time comes that I'm called upon.
Bro, you know, I wasn't going to even go this direction, but you just started this. Now I have to bring it up because that's something as far as that concept of Pan-Africanism and what would be the potential if Black Americans moved back to Africa or became transnationals or just took advantage of both worlds. Bro, what I've been trying to tell people for years, and I will continue to say this until it ends, is that we don't understand the force. I think the world, some parts of the world are waiting and some parts of the world are scared because we don't, I mean, you have a whole continent of people who are waiting for Black Americans to come home and use what they, you know, what they have or the talents that they don't even know they have, that people have been, you know, abusing and exploiting for years and bring it home. Bruh, man, it's powerful, man. And that's something that, you know, when we talk about how to defeat these institutionalized racism and institutionalized forces that discriminate against Black people, we have to become a system. We have to become united. And I mean, like you said, I'm one of those people that I'm trying to have my, you know, my ears to the ground. I'm trying to raise awareness about this because I think people stay asleep. It's the sleeping giant.
It's a manufactured sleeping giant. I mean, it's not until recently that even American media has not had a full-on waged this full-on war when it comes to perception against Africa. It's not until recently that has even begun to lighten up a bit. And only because we have the direct-to-consumer ability to see what we want to see and not what we're fed. And so, gone are the days of the feed the children with the flies on the faces of the kids. And now are the days of the burner boys. And there's a different perspective. The year of return in Ghana, there's a new outlook on Africa. And there's a new understanding of what it might mean to go home. This is the greatest influx of Black millennials traveling to Africa that has ever happened in the history of history. We've never had this much influx of Black Americans wanting to go to West Africa ever. Even Europeans, the Black Europeans who are more connected, I would say, to the continent, but the influx of them also going down in waves, and now the Jamaicans are going down in waves. And the way that Africa is opening up its travel restrictions internationally and more so nationally for African citizens to travel across the borders in this great continent. I mean, we're on the verge of something that's going to be amazing. And I mean, it's just exciting times. If you take these, I would say, super trained Black Americans, especially within entrepreneurship back home, because you got to think about it. Once removed, now gone through hundreds of years of free labor, now gone through hundreds of years of discrimination, being able to persevere through this 400, 500 plus years of I would say, pressure, create some of the most brilliant, resilient individuals that you'll probably ever find, and don't let them be business minded. Having those, I would say, now transformed individuals come back to the continent, you have now created these superpowers. You've now created these super bosses who understand how to move. And now, with the restrictions lifted from discrimination and racial oppression, the sky's the limit.
I mean, there's nothing that's the sleeping African giant that I'm talking about. Like once, and I think it's only a matter of time, bro. I really do. I think there's at some point, I pray to live to see it, but I know that it's going to happen very soon. And like you said, you got to be ready when that time comes. And because initially what I was going to bring up was that whole idea. You mentioned that you were going to be lost, but this kind of stood out to me more, and I really wanted to shift to that direction because now I really want to know about your organization that you founded and what was the purpose, what inspired you finding that and building on that now.
So I think it all happened at the time it was supposed to happen. A good friend of mine, Nia Muhammad from the University of Illinois, reached out and explained that, you know, we're all doing these different things and we're all very in tune and this is kind of her vision for philanthropy. And at the time I was trying to get more involved in some philanthropical efforts, but I didn't have I would say maybe a group of like-minded people that I necessarily wanted to do things with. And so, I mean, the timing was perfect around, I would say, I think it was around end of 2015 or beginning of 2016. Mm-hmm. The timing was just perfect for this thing to happen. And she brought the idea to me, and you know, I interfaced with people like Bello Hamid and a few other people who I knew might be interested in pursuing these efforts. And she brought to the table people we have members in Jamaica, we have members in Trinidad and Tobago, we have members all over the world. And everyone was on the same page. And so what started as a couple of kind of boardroom conversations grew into us founding the organization, coming up with mantras and names and branding and everything, and hitting the ground running and immediately going and doing what we said we wanted to do, with little fundraising and little kind of financial backing, but with the fervent burning desire to execute and to elevate certain people's lives that we knew we had the ability to affect. And so, I mean, it was one of those things that's kind of fate. I mean, we have engineers, we have architects, we have people in business and administration, and people in policy and government. We have ambassadors to different countries, all in this one group. And we do what we can and what we're most skilled in individually to add to the greater cause of improving the lives of people that are living in the diaspora and in Africa, based on what we know needs to improve and what we know should be the case, and not just looking at a situation that is helpable as if it's helpless.
So how can people be more involved and help contribute to that? Because I think that's very important, and I think the potential to make a difference is critical, and can be incredible if we can be able to bring more people to the forefront to be able to contribute. Because you can already see that there's an interdisciplinary effort that's already festering there. So what can people do to be able to help out and be part of this?
People can visit our website, globalgood.org. We're on social media, GUD, on Instagram, on Global United Diaspora. Really, it's reaching out. It's really keeping up with us, seeing what we got going on. It's always open invitation. We're always looking for people to volunteer or to get involved. When we go on different trips from Kenya. I mean, I flew to Kenya solo, to set up shop with an organization that we then took a trip of maybe 10 to 12 people to go and follow up and do the work. I mean, it's really having the urge or the want to do this type of work. And if you do have the inclination, it's reaching out. I mean, all of us are very receptive to any alerts that come our way. It's actually like we're a little militant when it comes to being receptive to outreach. So it's really just reaching out on any of those platforms and joining. It's not really that big of a deal. If you have the want to be a part of change, reach out and find out what's going on, what projects you might have coming up. And it could be that it's something going on in your area that would make it very easy for you to be involved. So the Global U Diaspora on Instagram and globalgood.org is the website.
Fantastic. And before we start wrapping up, I also want to add to the fact that I know you all had a conference in Ghana as well, and I was able to vicariously see through keeping up with you all that it had a great turnout, and there were tons of people who were able to share and present. So I hope you all continue to build on that too, because that's something that I would definitely love to continue to contribute as well in that regard.
Yeah, that conference was one of a kind. I mean, the purpose of that conference was to bring together other non-for-profit organizations to kind of help possibly begin to bridge some of the gaps and share resources with each other. Because a lot of times what happens is organizations are doing similar work, but we're doing them separately instead of coming together to have a greater impact. And so the overall reason that we put that conference together was to start to bridge some of those gaps and say, how can we work together to do more versus us having these little pockets and little explosions of impact. We could have a nuclear impact, if you will, versus just a small atomic impact. So yeah, I think that the work has to continue, and I mean, we're dedicated to it. So it's a good time.
So finally, man, what's next for you? What's coming up for you? I mean, like you said, you DJ, you got the screenwriting. I know you were on tour with Rotimi not too long ago. So like, what's next for you as you continue to grow and evolve?
What's next for me, man? The sky's the limit. I've always had an outlook that there's nothing that I can't touch and affect, and so. Immediately what's on my list right now, we're headed to Ghana next month. I'll be shooting a short film there that will begin kind of what we discussed earlier, which is showing some more of our perspective from a very realistic standpoint. It's time to start telling some of our stories in a relatable manner that people, no matter where they view it in the world, can understand, or at least can get a taste of culturally what makes us different and what makes us alike. And so I'm working on a short film there. I'm adapting a book of shorts that a young man wrote called Made in Ghana into a series of shorts. And so we'll start with the first one while I'm there. It's called Hustle. It's pretty dope. And then on the music side, I'll definitely be with Rotimi in Ghana at one point. He's doing Afro Nation, might be doing Afrochella festivals. But I'm also working with a couple of different Ghanaian artists on the A&R side, just to push the music forward. Because I'm working with some dope producers here in the States. They're actually from London, SOS, Sons of Sonics. Look them up. Amazing people. They just actually did Jennifer Lopez's latest single, and a couple other people. But putting some heads together on that side, we're gonna make some magic happen while I'm in Ghana with a few different Ghanaian artists like King Promise and RJZ and a couple other cats from the Name Gang, Darko Vibes that are just doing amazing stuff. So I heard it here first. But that's kind of what's on the agenda immediately is Ghana. And then I'm also working on a feature-length film that'll be shot in Chicago. So a lot of talks happening right now. We're still putting things together, but that's all I can say on that. Okay. But these are things that are kind of immediately coming up.
Man, dog, like I said, bro, you know how to take advantage of your time, bro. And well, I'm so proud of you, dog. It's so good to just see you out here doing what you love to do and being able to share your journey with us, you know, from industrial engineering to knowing like that's not what moved your spirit, and just kind of letting your spirit and your passion take you to where you are. I think it's very inspiring for others to see and to know that it's not what you just automatically construct for yourself that's going to be who you are unless you choose that to be your life. You know what I mean? So for you to be able to share your journey with us, and for me to be able to see you be able to shine, bro, in whatever way, behind the scenes, in front of the stage, however you do it, bro, you know, keep doing your thing, man. However I can support you, please let me know. You know, I'm always here to do that. And I appreciate your time for even taking the time to join me and talk about this on this show. I know our listeners will really, really just enjoy, and I think they'll be able to like really learn a lot, you know, just from this conversation. And I know there could have been so much more we could talk about, and I know that I wanna just, you know, gently just cut things short and be able to save more for the future. So, man, appreciate you joining the show.
Most certainly, man. I appreciate you welcoming me to the show. We've always been a big brother figure, man, since way back. People don't know, but this guy Kelechi, man, this is a special human being. So I'm honored to even be able to come and have a discussion with you on your platform and be able to reach the people that I know are also special individuals, because people that follow you and listen to you are smart, very, very smart, wise people. So this is dope. It's a dope opportunity. I mean, we have more to talk about, I'm sure. At some point, we'll get back at it again.
We absolutely will. And then if you are on social media, how can people follow you, man?
I'm on social media, all things Mike Abrantie. That's M-I-K-E, Mike Abrantie, A-B-R-A-N-T-I-E, on everything. Everywhere you go, you find me there. That's what it is.
My brother, thank you so much, man. Peace and blessings, bro.
Of course. Peace and love, man. Peace and love. I appreciate it again.
So that's going to do it for this episode of My Black is Transnational. I'd like to thank our guest, Mr. Mike Abrantie, for joining us on the show and sharing such great insight and great information with us. I hope that you all enjoyed the conversation Mike and I had on this episode. And if you want to listen to more episodes that we've had on the past, please make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast listening apps. It's available on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Google, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast listening apps. Please make sure to also follow me on Instagram at BlackTransnational_. Or if you just want to know more about our show, check out our website at blacktransnational.wixsite.com/podcast. So until then, I'll be signing off for now. My name is Dr. Kelechi Bay Lamberts. My Black is Transnational, and I hope by the end of this, yours will be too. Peace.